Welcome back to those of you following us in our top baseball stories out of Indiana for 2019. And I'll tell you, when I was looking at this episode that we're going to have right here, we're talking travel baseball. Now, this is a unique episode that we're going to have because if you look at some of the other sessions, you looked at Little League, there's a set number of teams. They have a Indiana state championship, so it's a common ground that we all are familiar with. You look at high school, it's the same way. You look at college, you look at the pros. Now, travel ball is a different animal. So in looking online, I'm looking and I'm like, who we're going to talk about with travel baseball, or who we're going to talk to when we talk travel baseball in the top stories in baseball in Indiana, because there's no central tournament. There's so many teams. Just a quick search. My last count was, I think, over 115 travel ball baseball teams in Indiana. Well, in doing my research, I got to look no farther than my backyard, and I'm glad to have our guest here with us to talk about travel baseball from 2019 and really look at the whole scene of travel baseball, how it's changed, where it's going. I'm talking right now, our guest is Bill Sampen. He runs Samps Hack Shack here in Brownsburg, Indiana, my hometown, and he's got a little bit of baseball experience. And, Coach Sampen here, I just really wanted an excuse to wear my Expos hats. Really, all this is about in front of people. Of course, I'm kidding. Bill Sampen, of course, played for the Montreal Expos, and if you see me traveling the state, you know I love my Expos. So, Coach, I appreciate you joining us today as we're talking travel baseball in Indiana. So, I'll tell you, let's start with that. You know, you played for the Expos. Looking at the current travel ball scene, and looking how you got to your major league career, let's back up before we talk about current travel ball in Indiana, and let's talk about your background. Let's talk about how you got to the major leagues, some of the leagues you played in. Tell us where you're from, and that environment that you played in growing up is going to be a little bit different than a lot of the guys growing up with today. So let's look at your background, how you got to the big leagues.
Yeah, it's definitely a different world today, and my trip to the big leagues is not probably a very normal path. I grew up in a really small town in central Illinois, a town of 500 people. Emden is the name of the town, and there was no travel baseball per se at that time or in that area. We had American Legion baseball, which does still exist, but it's taken kind of a backseat, if you will, to travel baseball, generally speaking, nowadays. But American Legion baseball was the only option that I'm aware of at that time, and that was essentially in our area probably 5 or 6 high school districts that fed into the American Legion team. Oddly enough, following my junior year of high school, I got cut from that team, so I ended up playing rec baseball the summer after my junior year of high school. I made the team my senior year, after my senior year, but didn't really pitch. I played short and pitched very sparingly. All of that led then to having 0 colleges recruit me to play baseball. So I went to a Division III school, McMurray College in Jacksonville, Illinois, and played baseball and basketball there. In all honesty, the baseball program was not very good. It was an afterthought. My senior year, a new coach came in and started to try to build a program and put together a legitimate schedule and so forth. And we ended up playing a couple of Division I schools, and I had an opportunity to pitch against them. And I think that's kind of where I probably started to get on the professional scouts radar just a little bit. I hadn't played any summer baseball during my college years. I would call the Central Illinois Collegiate League. I'd call coaches from that league and try to get a tryout. I couldn't even get a tryout. So I played slow pitch softball in the summers during my college career, all the way up to the time I signed my first professional contract. So the opportunities that kids have today are significantly different than the way things were set up back in my day, for sure.
As we look at what you just said, Coach, you talked about at one point, getting cut in high school. No college recruits are ringing your phone, knocking on your door. Yet here you sit now, years later, a veteran MLB player, and making a career out of baseball. So if you've watched the other series in this episode, if you've watched the other episodes in this series of Top Stories in Baseball, that's the recurring theme I'm seeing again. Have a passion, do the work, stay the course. And that's, the first just few minutes of what you're saying there is dead on point, and I'm glad you brought that up. So we've got the background. You got into college, and you start to get seen. You're staying the course. You're doing the work. Now you're in the pros. You tell us a little bit about your MLB career and where that led you to where you are today.
Well, my first couple of years of professional baseball were not so great either. I had an arm injury, only pitched 11 innings my first season, had my first shoulder surgery following that season, cut my next season short. I ended up in another half-season league because of the injury and my rehabilitation. Only pitched 28 innings in that year because my arm was still hurting. Fast forward the following season, for some reason the Pirates kept me around. I don't know why. They gave me $3,000 to sign, so they didn't have anything invested in me. And I'm very thankful for the fact that they stuck with me through that. I am deeply indebted to them for that. And the following season, somehow I ended up in a high A ball. And my arm was still bothering me, hurting a lot at the beginning of the season. I wasn't pitching very well. I got thrown to the bullpen, which, to be honest with you, was probably really close to being released. And fortunately for me, the guy who replaced me in the starting rotation didn't throw very well either. So I got a chance to get back in there. And in spite of the fact that my shoulder hurt, I started to pitch pretty well. My pain was so severe that there were a lot of times between starts I didn't pick up a baseball, which is not the recommended path for in between starts. But I kind of sucked it up and gutted it out, probably through, with 2 playoff wins. I probably threw 160 innings that season and got through it and pitched well enough, I think, again, for them to invest some time and effort into me. Had a second shoulder surgery. And then I went to the Dominican Republic for winter ball following my, a year in AA. And I got picked up in the Rule 5 draft. The Montreal Expos had seen me along the way. They liked me. I wasn't protected on the 40-man roster with the Pirates. And so the Expos took me in the Rule 5 draft. Again, an opportunity that really probably gave me my chance because I got to go to spring training for the first time. And I made the club out of spring training and, got some opportunities to pitch. And when the rosters went back down to normal size, that was the year that spring training was shortened because of the lockout. So they expanded the roster 2 positions, 2 spots, probably got me a chance again, and pitched well enough for them to keep me around and had the opportunity to stay with the Expos for about 3 seasons before they traded me. So I look back on that path and think I was really, really fortunate. I just got lucky. I got lucky that some people saw something in me that I probably didn't even see in myself, and they kept me around, and I had some good timing and just was really, really fortunate, and I'm thankful for that. Probably more today than I was even at the time when I was in the midst of it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I got to ask you, Coach, how's that arm feeling right now? I know earlier today you were pitching to some local college kids that are home on their break, and you're throwing to the young kids all day. I mean, you still got it, I'm assuming.
Well, I don't know if I ever had it, but my arm still works. So it's still attached. So I'm thankful I can still throw.
Yeah. Okay, so you had your major league career, and let's fast forward through that. You're in Brownsburg now, and you're running Samps Hack Shack, but you're also doing something else. You're the co-founder of the Indiana Expos, the travel ball team, and take us through the Indiana Expos season. Now we're going to talk about the travel ball scene in general, but I want to hit at the Indiana Expos organization as well. Maybe how it got started. I'd like to hear about the Diabetes Foundation that you have there. That looks like a great thing. So bring us into the Indiana Expos. Maybe starting from the beginning. What got you started with the Indiana Expos, and let's take it from there.
Well, we've had the Hack Shack open for a little over 10 years now, and just opened a second facility a couple years ago in Plainfield as well. And I never had any intention of doing travel teams. All 3 of my boys had played travel baseball. I understood the workload involved in that and all of the logistics and the planning, all the things involved. So that was never our intention. But about 3 years ago, maybe a little bit more now, a couple of kids that I was training, their dads asked me if I would ever be interested in coaching again a team. And I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested. So they came to me with an idea and a thought, kind of a proposal, if you will. And so my plan at that point was just to coach that team. They were 15 years old. I thought I would coach them, probably take them through, their 17-year-old year. Well, subsequently, 2 other people had approached me and said that they had been with the team. They had part of the kids that were going to remain together. Part of them went away. The team kind of split, wondered if we would adopt them. So I went from agreeing to coach a 15-year-old team to then having a 14-year-old team and a 13-year-old team. Both had approached us, and I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's give it a shot. So we did that. We didn't do tryouts. We just picked some kids, around and thought we'd give it a whirl, and found out not only that we liked it, but we felt like we could provide some things that maybe were somewhat missing in the travel world, have a little bit different approach. Really try to assist people and educate people in terms of the recruiting process and the odds of playing in college, and help them assess their abilities, help them develop as players, help them develop as people. And so we went from, having no teams, never having an intention to have a team, to, 5 teams, to now we have 8 teams, and that's probably going to continue to grow. So we've gone in, we're neck deep in it. We love it. We've had our first class is now seniors, and we just had our 16th college commit out of that group. So we're pretty excited about it, and just the opportunity to help kids and their families along the way.
Well, I like, one of the reasons I was excited to be able to rope off your busy time in this was, like you mentioned there, it is more than just, well, let's put it this way. We both know that their life, sort of the evolution of travel ball, generally speaking, has changed over the years. I think early on it started out as a really small group of teams picking up elite players from from all around. Now it's travel ball teams. Really, all towns across the state have a travel ball team. Like I said earlier, over 115, I think, at the last count that I saw. So and they come and go. There's a dynamic there that you may not have a guy in your 13U team to your 15U team to your on throughout. They're going in and out. So I mean, there's that dynamic there of the changing teams. What I want to talk about before we get into really the dynamics of travel ball in general, I'd like to talk about one of the things you're doing there with the Expos that really caught my attention. Tell me a little bit about the Diabetes Foundation that you're running through your facility and the Expos.
Well, our 2 oldest sons are type 1 diabetics. Both were diagnosed when they were young. Sam when he was about 5, and Isaac when he was about 12 or 13. And so we saw, obviously, the impact that had on them physically, emotionally, and every aspect of their life, the challenges that provided for them that really no one can understand. I mean, even we as parents don't understand it fully because we don't experience it personally, but we've witnessed it. And so we put together a foundation to try to do several things. I mean, educate people, we raise funds right now. Denise Faustman at Boston General in Massachusetts has what she believes is really groundbreaking, not a cure, but an aid and a help and assistance for type 1 diabetics that goes beyond just another type of blood meter or another gadget. So we've raised money to try to help that endeavor. And it gives our kids an opportunity. We're really trying to still figure out how to better tie it into what we do, but it does give the organization a broader sense than just a baseball team. And it does give our kids and our families an opportunity. If they don't have something like that in their life, it gives them another avenue to have a charity, something that's somewhat personal because of the tie-in and so forth. And it makes it just bigger than baseball.
Well, and hats off to you for the efforts and the path that you're moving there. Like you said, there's always ways to to interlink those two more together, but you're on the right path. And, one of the things in speaking with Mr. Barber with the base, who I know you're familiar with, he has a similar story. He had this passion. He wants to get involved in doing something, but he didn't know how to do it. So he just started moving. And then it's where we are with the base. So, I'm excited to see where that's going to head in the future. And like I said, hats off to you for getting it started, because that's where it begins. So as we look at the travel ball scene, and alluding to what you mentioned, more than just baseball, and talking offline, I know that's one of the things that got you involved in the travel ball scene, was just making it more about promises for scholarships. It's more than that. It's more than just baseball. It's the whole scene of raising the full amateur kid himself. But let's look at that travel ball scene across the state. Like I said earlier, there's no central state tournament. So what are some of the big tournaments the Expos go to, for example?
Well, it varies a little bit from year to year. And we try to become more and more sensitive to where do we need to go, what's best for the kids, what's best for each certain team, what's best for the families, because you can spend as much money as you want in travel baseball. And so we've tried to be sensitive to that. But we've gone down to Atlanta in the past, the WWBA National Championships. It's a huge tournament that I really enjoy going to. We're not going to go to that this year. It's, again, very expensive. It's a whole week in a hotel for parents, so we're gonna pass that one by. But we try to stay in Indiana as much as possible, and yet get out of state 2 to 3 times, depending upon the age group, maybe 4 times, to get our kids exposed to other players too, players from other states, players from other parts of the country, get in front of different college coaches and so forth. So we switch it around a little bit from year to year and try to make those decisions based on what we think is best for the personnel that we have.
Tell me a little bit about the makeup of your teams, and maybe talk about some of the, the teams that you're playing, some of the teams that you see, other Indiana teams that you're seeing at all these tournaments that you guys go, where you're crossing paths, for example. But there's different makeups, obviously, of the different travel teams across the state. Some of them are just exclusively local kids. Some of them draw from, big part of the state. Some of them draw from all across the Midwest. Tell us about your Expos team and who you guys are drawing from.
Yeah, that varies a little bit from age to age too. But we've had several kids from Bloomington, and then, kids up from Kokomo, Pendleton, but pretty much we're central Indiana. We don't, we really aren't a regional type team. I think that's a different niche, if you will, and not something that we're involved in at all right now. Nothing wrong with it, to each their own. But we try to get kids who are close enough proximity to us that we can have access to them, and we try to connect with them for 4 to 6 weeks in the fall, and we have 10 weeks of workouts during the winter. So to have kids from too far away probably makes it not very reasonable for them. We like that contact. We like to be around, and we want to have that interaction with them. So we stay pretty much in central Indiana by and large, in terms of the kids that we draw.
And the tournaments just over the years, maybe, talking about some of the other travel teams across the state, who are some of the other organizations that, you run into quite frequently in some of the tournaments that you're playing in?
Well, there's so many teams from this state and from the region that honestly, you don't run into the same teams very often. You may be in the same tournaments, but that's one of the things I like. That's why we move around. We don't want to play necessarily the same people all the time. But I mean, the Indiana Bulls have been around, they're probably the flagship organization in Indiana, and they draw a lot of talented kids, year in and year out. One of the newer teams is the Evo Shield Canes. They're more of a regional type. And honestly, as you said, the list continues to grow, and it continues to change from year to year, because you'll have some that come and some that go. So, I mean, it's countless, the teams that are out there, and the teams that you run into just changes from year to year and week to week.
Yep. Well, and like going back to the list I looked at online, and I follow a lot of the travel teams online, but just some of the websites, you could probably just pick a mascot, and there's probably a travel team with that name just in India.
Pretty close. Yeah, pretty close.
And as we look at the travel ball scene, maybe the evolution of travel ball in general, I think as you look at it early on, and first of all, I'll say that there is sometimes a almost political people, their opinions, the polarity of opinions on travel ball. You know, some people are just adamantly against it. Some people are saying that you can't live without it. I'm one that thinks that everything can coexist, and travel ball is a sign of the times. As a matter of fact, as you look at other sports, travel ball really is one of the last sports in Indiana anyway that reached that travel ball type environment that we see today. If you look at swimming, basketball, volleyball, musical aspects or musical events, travel something has been around forever, and baseball is really one of the last ones to get there. But
True.
It leads to that type of polarity and opinion that I think is similar to, if you look at basketball, there's some of the old schoolers that say, hey, one class is the only way that Indiana should ever be. And the other people are saying, no way, it's got to be even more classes. I think the only thing that relates to that in baseball is travel ball versus, you know, the local leagues. And I don't think there's an argument there. I think it's a sign of the times, but it has definitely changed. I think the evolution of travel baseball started out, I consider American Legion a travel ball. You know, it's
right.
But even outside of what we think of today as travel ball, probably started out with just a few teams grabbing people from all over the state. Now it's where we're at with, you know, all kinds of teams. It's anything goes. There's local exclusive, everything up to, you know, Midwestern United States poll. So looking at where we're at, maybe considering maybe your youth experience, where travel ball has gone, I would like to see it with more organizations like yourself, where you have it, you know, you're also tied to a foundation, you're looking outside the field. And I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I think early on, a lot of it was that, hey, come with our travel ball team, we'll get you a Division I scholarship. I think we've been in travel ball long enough that that is less. I'm sure it still happens, that's the organization to get them that promise of a scholarship. I think it's less, but I'd like to hear your opinion on, you know, kind of the evolution of travel ball over the last 20 years, say.
Well, yeah, it has changed a lot, and I think it continues to change and morph. And you're right. To some people, travel ball is the devil, and it destroys every kid that ever plays it. And to some, it's the end all be all. And I think there's middle ground there. We don't start our teams until 13. We try to be respectful of and encourage people to stay in their local leagues until, you know, older ages. Having said that, I believe that every family has to assess their own situation, and you know, people leave local leagues for a number of reasons, and that's a personal matter. I don't think it's a right or wrong. I mean, like I said, we encourage people to stay in their local leagues. I think that's a good thing. But I've even, you know, spoken with people in local organizations, the leadership, and say, if a family believes it's best for their child, then they have every right to do that. And they're either going to figure out it was best or it wasn't. But either way, that's their decision. I don't think there needs to be an animosity about it. And some of the local leagues, you know, some of them around here try to marry the two. They have a kind of a travel league within their local organization to try to bridge that gap and encourage people to stay. Because a lot of times, you know how it is, the more competitive kids feel like they want a little bit more. They want to be pushed, and they want a little bit of more competition than perhaps the local rec league can provide. So to their credit, local leagues now are trying to help bridge that gap and put them into some more competitive situations where they can do the local, but they can also go to some of the tournaments and play that kind of competition. So I think that's a good step. I mean, is it ideal or is it perfect? Of course not. But I think it does at least give those more competitive kids an opportunity to stay if they want to.
Yep. Well, and I think that what you said there, it's a family choice. I think
Right.
that by itself puts the debate to bed. I think
Yes.
it's a individual and family choice, and we're seeing different hybrids that work different ways in different communities. And
Right.
I'm for every type that works for the community and that works for the family. And as we kind of wrap things up and thinking about travel ball, I'm an old schooler. I never got a chance to play travel ball, but I guarantee I would have if it was around. Looking across Indiana, of course, you got Grand Park. They're hosting tournaments. What are some of the other big facilities that in Indiana that are drawing tournaments also that are drawing teams from outside? What's bringing people to Indiana? What are some of the travel ball tournaments that are bringing teams outside of Indiana into our great state?
Right. Well, Grant Park is probably the primary facility that has the ability to host, tournaments in and of itself. But what a lot of the tournament organizations do is they will, contract local high schools and local colleges, and then they will have their tournament. They'll host their tournament at multiple sites like that, and those draw people in from other states and other areas as well. Grant Park is the one centralized, because they have a number of fields, and they'll still farm some of it out to high schools. But Butler and Wabash and DePaul and IU and Purdue and all of those schools typically are involved in hosting a portion of a tournament, and that's attractive to people. They get to play on college fields, and it draws people in from all over the place too.
Absolutely. I was traveling the state this summer, finishing up the Indiana Colleges baseball hat collection. And, I foolishly said, hey, if I do it over the summer, the college coaches won't be as busy. No, that wasn't true. But
yeah,
every field I went to, Butler, Wabash, Purdue, every single one of them, there was a travel ball tournament going on.
Yeah.
Big tournaments. And I'll tell you, that's great. I think it's, Indiana's a basketball state. Yeah, we're a basketball state, but with the scene that's available now, the travel ball scene is really, I think, drawing a lot of people to Indiana for baseball. And we are a baseball rich state. And yeah, of course, I don't think we'll ever be able to compete with the southern states as far as hosting the big tournaments year round, because those are vacation hotspots. But
right.
It's good to see, the colleges are really getting involved as far as offering their fields. The high schools, we've got Grand Park. We've got great facilities going up every day all over the state. So it's a good scene to watch. As I think about it, everybody says, hat guy, what's your next collection? What are you going to do? So, I'm thinking American Legion, things like that. And I thought about travel ball, and yes, if you're a travel ball team, I want your hat. But boy, I don't think I'll
we can hook you up.
Collection with new schools or new teams popping up every day. But Coach, as we wrap things up, like I said, I am Hardy the Hat Guy, so I got a challenge here for you. Now, I know you know your baseball. In all of these interviews, I've been trying to do some kind of hat challenge where I'm trying to see how well the coaches know the hats. And I've got a special one for you because, of course, you played for the Montreal Expos, one of my favorite hats of all time. As I said earlier, I think I gave away about 8 to 10 of these last year. So I've got a special hat challenge for you, and that is teams that no longer exist, like our Expos, teams that no longer exist. So I've got 5 hats I'm going to try to trick you with here. All right. Hat number 1, these are, again, all teams that no longer have a baseball team. There is one that is out of state. The rest of them are tied to Indiana, but I got a feeling you'll get this first one here because it has somewhat of a tie to the Expos. Hat number 1.
That's the old Washington Senators.
Yes, that is the Washington Senators, and you've probably seen me wear that hat all over the place. Hat number 2, this might be a trick question right here. This is an Indiana college, and I guess you could say theoretically the college doesn't exist either, but definitely the baseball team.
That is what was Bethel College.
Yes, of course that is Bethel University now. That was I tried to trick you, but I should have known better. Hat number 3, again, another college that still exists, but to the dismay of Coach Woodridge up in Nancilla, the baseball team no longer exists.
Holy Cross.
Yeah, Holy Cross, the school up in South Bend there. 3 for 3. Now, the next are not tied to a school. And two teams that I hold dear to my heart. They are tied to Indiana, but actually the organization doesn't exist anymore. Hat number 4 right here.
The ABCs.
Yeah, you can make that out. I knew I was talking to another baseball fan. One of my prize hats right there. That's from the Indianapolis ABCs from the old Negro Leagues that played here in Indianapolis. The last hat on a going off that last one.
That is another Negro League team, the Indianapolis Clowns.
That is the Indianapolis Clowns. I knew I should have known better than to try to trick you there, Coach. But I really appreciate you jumping in here with us. You know, I know you got a busy schedule there at your facility and with the Expos. I love what you're doing with the foundation, and I think it's a sign that, like we said, you know, travel ball is not evil. Travel ball is not everything. It is what it is. It's a sign of the times. And with what you're doing there, you're moving it in the right direction. You still have ties to the local community. So it's programs like yours. And I know there's others throughout the state that are doing the same thing. So hats off to all of you. Appreciate your time here in our top stories in baseball for 2019. I'm with Bill Sampen, former Montreal Expos, current director of the Indiana Expos, and Samps Hack Shack here in Brownsburg. Thanks, Coach.